Good evening and welcome to Montgomery County's United in Service and Support Community webinar that will focus on local law enforcement resources for eviction, domestic violence, and child support. Thank you for joining us. I'm your moderator, Jordan Lindsay. Now, this is one of many webinars that is part of a series of informational sessions with elected leaders who are united in their efforts to support our residents during these challenging times. Now, today's host is Montgomery County Councilmember Sydney Katz. Councilmember Katz is joined by Keena Jones, the Assistant Sheriff, and Captain Michael Brickles with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, Sheila Bagari with the Deputy Chief of the Special Victims Division with the State's Attorney's Office, Christine Hong, the Chief of Services to End and Prevent Homelessness at the Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services, and Smita Varia, the Program Manager with the Family Justice Center. We will hear from them in a few moments. We also have questions that have come in through our website, and we'll be asking residents to share questions using the Q&A function. Now, some of these questions will be answered today, and others will be used to shape our next webinar focused on the resources that residents need most. The Q&A feature on Zoom can be located at the bottom of your Zoom screen and the toolbar. For the panelists, we kindly ask that you mute yourself when it is not your turn to provide remarks. We also have simultaneous interpretation services available from English to Spanish for those who may need it. Participants here on Zoom can hear Spanish interpretation by selecting the interpretation button at the bottom of their Zoom screens. This will be the globe-shaped button located in the toolbar. Then select interpretation in Spanish. Now I'll toss it to my colleague, Marcela Rodriguez, to translate how to access the Spanish channel. Marcela, to you.
Thank you, Jordan. Buenas noches a todos. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos. Durante la sesión informativa contaremos con servicios de interpretación simultánea del inglés al español. Para quienes lo necesiten, los participantes en Zoom deben seleccionar el botón de interpretación en la parte inferior de sus pantallas. Este será el botón en forma de globo ubicado en la barra de herramientas y posteriormente seleccionar la opción de interpretación en español. Muchísimas gracias. Jordan, back to you.
Thank you so much, Marcela. Now I'll go ahead and toss it to Montgomery County Councilmember Sydney Katz for remarks. Councilmember Katz, to you.
Well, thank you, Jordan, and good evening, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on local law enforcement resources for eviction, domestic violence, and child support in Montgomery County. I am Sydney Katz, the council member for District 3 and chair of the Public Safety Committee, and I'm honored to host this important discussion. Thank you for taking the time to join us. Eviction, domestic violence, and child support are challenges that impact many families in our community. Montgomery County is committed to supporting residents through programs like Emergency Eviction Prevention, which offers financial aid to prevent homelessness, the Abused Persons Program, providing crisis counseling and shelter for domestic violence survivors, and the Circuit Court's Family Department, which ensures child support for families. Today, we'll explore how to access these vital resources and hear from experts about the role of law enforcement and community services in addressing these issues. A cornerstone of our response to domestic violence is the Family Justice Center, a one-stop hub where survivors can access legal aid, counseling, and safety planning. The FJC partners with the Sheriff's Office to serve protective orders, the State's Attorney's Office to prosecute cases, Montgomery County Police to ensure immediate safety, the Department of Health and Human Services for crisis support, and community organizations like the Women's Center for Montgomery County to provide advocacy and resources. This collaboration exemplifies our commitment to comprehensive, compassionate support. I'm thrilled to introduce our distinguished panelists, each bringing unique expertise to this conversation. Assistant Sheriff Keena Jones from the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office, Sheila Bagari who's the Deputy Chief of the Special Victims Division at the State's Attorney's Office, Christine Hong from Services to End and Prevent Homelessness at the Department of Health and Human Services, Tom Mannion, Director of Family Justice Center, and Smita Varia, Program Manager Family Justice Center, Captain Brickles of the Sheriff's Office Criminal Division. We're fortunate to have such knowledgeable panelists and encourage you to engage by asking questions during the question and answer portion of sessions. Together, we'll learn how to navigate these challenges and access the support available in Montgomery County. Before we get started, I'd like to recognize Angela Geer, who's from Council Member Andrew Friedsen's office, and Sierra Gray from Council Member Lori Ann Sales' office this evening, who have joined us this evening as well. So with all of that, let's get started with our first panelist, Assistant Chief Keena Jones with the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. Thank you, and I know this will be a productive and informative session.
Good evening. Thank you, Councilmember Katz, for the introduction, organizing the panel, and for creating this dynamic discussion with the residents of Montgomery County. As you are aware, Sheriff Lee prioritizes community outreach and partnerships between each of the agencies represented this evening. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office is the oldest law enforcement agency serving in the county, and we currently serve as the law enforcement arm of the court system. We are honored to speak tonight to our residents about some of the operations that the Sheriff's Office conducts, collaborative efforts, and the committed partnerships with public safety and community leaders to ensure that our residents are receiving appropriate services and resources. Later you will hear from Ms. Smita Varia, Project Manager at the Family Justice Center. She works in conjunction with our Family Division Domestic Violence Section. For the evictions presentation, I would like to introduce Captain Michael Brickles from our Criminal Civil Division. He oversees operations for the county's eviction and child support section. Thank you. Captain Brickles.
Thank you, Assistant Sheriff Keena Jones. Good evening, everyone. Hey, so I have I have just a few minutes. I wanted to go over a couple things about evictions. The Sheriff's Office receives about 10,000 writs of restitution, writs of possession each year from the court system. Now, I know that sounds like a lot. Most of them, a good portion of them, end up being resolved before it actually comes to the eviction process. A lot of that has to do with, the eviction, the amount owed being paid. The tenants know that the eviction's coming. They move. And I think a lot of that has to do, and if you look at the stats on the next slide, down at the bottom, there's a percentage of writs executed. As you can see, coming out of 2022, they started to increase a little bit coming out of the pandemic, but the writs received increase. I'm sorry, but the percentage of writs executed have gone down significantly, and I think part of that is due to the education to the public. We've been doing presentations, myself and some of the other command staff, presentations to the Office of Human Rights and other groups. Just trying to educate people so they can help their clients understand the process. So speaking of understanding the process, if we go to the next slide, it has to be 3 months. You'll see the numbers on the left represent just steps, not actual weeks or anything like that. So the first three are basically unpaid rent. So, it's going to be 3 months right off the bat. Then a notice gets mailed to the tenant, and the Sheriff's Office also posts a notice. On those notices is a court date. So the tenant and landlord go to that hearing date. If judgment is granted, the request for writ is made, and the writ is sent over to the Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office will not, we won't schedule the eviction until the landlord calls to schedule that eviction. So that kind of plays into the timeline that I'll go over here later in the question and answers portion of this. So the Sheriff's final eviction notices, we post those 10 days out. So basically once, we get the eviction scheduled, we'll post the eviction notice, the final notice, and the eviction won't be held within 10 days of that notice. So basically the tenants know that and feel comfortable that they're not going to be evicted within 10 days of that notice being put out. I think that's another portion of it that we're educating people on once they get that final notice, they have a limited time. A lot of people make arrangements to move and either move or make payment on the overdue amount. So, and then of course, the eviction occurs. So that kind of sums up the process. Some of the numbers that that we take in. There's with the approximate 10,000 writs of restitution that we have to post approximately 50,000 landlord-tenant notices. So it's busy. We have a lot going on, but again, we're committed to educating the community and the other resources to try to resolve as many of these as possible before the actual eviction occurs. So if we go to the next slide, there's just some contact info. There's you have my desk number. And then the main eviction number. The best time to call the eviction section, just due to the scheduling of the evictions, is between 10 and 2 p.m. We do have an additional staff member that works those hours that can assist. But as you probably can imagine, there's multiple phone calls coming in, so it's very overwhelming. And we do our best to return phone calls and get back to everyone as soon as we can. But that is all I have for now, and I look forward to answering a few questions later on.
Great, thank you so much.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Jordan.
Okay, I think I'll toss it to you, Councilmember Katz, but it looks like next we have Shillab Gary with the State's Attorney's Office.
I did want to thank the Assistant Sheriff Jones and Captain Brickles, and with that, we're going to be very happy to introduce Sheila Gary from the State's Attorney's Office, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, Councilmember Katz, and giving us the opportunity to speak real quickly about, what we do at the State's Attorney's Office. I'm the Deputy Chief of the Special Victims Division. The chief of our unit is Debbie Feinstein, who's my boss, and then, of course, our State's Attorney, who's John McCarthy, who is both of our bosses. So I just kind of want to talk to everyone about what our office does, the various agencies that we work with, and resources and hotlines that members of the community can take advantage of if you are or know someone who is a witness or a victim to a crime. These are all free of charge. So just want to kind of educate you on where you can reach out to. So on the next slide, we have written out various resources that people can use. Obviously, the first one is the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office. That's the main number and an email address that you can reach out to. We at the State's Attorney's Office conduct the investigation and prosecution of criminal defendants. Cases are usually brought to us once they are police charged. Citizens can also bring their own charges through the Commissioner's Office. And our goal really is to serve public interest through fair and honest administration of justice. We have an on-call attorney, a prosecutor every day, whose job is really just to field questions and be there as a resource for the community. So, if you email that email address, it'll go to whoever's on duty that day. If you call the front desk line and it's something that requires a legal question, they will field it to the prosecutor who's on duty that day. So you can either call, you can email, you can also come in person during business hours and meet with a prosecutor in our office. Obviously, if this is an emergency, call 911. If it's a non-emergency that you want to report, you can also call the non-emergency line at 311. But you can also always use our office as a resource to just kind of figure out next steps or just talk about, if you want to discuss being a witness to, victim of a crime, or someone that you know. We have several specialized units in our office. So the Special Victims Division is where I work, and we handle cases of domestic violence, elder and vulnerable adult abuse, child abuse and neglect and abduction, sexual assaults, sex trafficking, internet crimes. And so we work with a lot of other agencies in a multidisciplinary fashion to investigate and prosecute these crimes, which include Adult Protective Services, Child Protective Services, the Crisis Center, the Family Justice Center, and the Treehouse Child Advocacy Center. All of those numbers are also on the screen for you. Adult Protective Services, that's the hotline that you can call to report the risk of abuse or neglect, financial exploitation, or self-neglect of a vulnerable adult, meaning someone who's over 18 years of age. Vulnerable meaning someone who lacks the physical or mental capacity to provide for their daily needs. That's the phone number below it for Child Protective Services. It's a 24/7 reporting hotline, again, where you can call to report suspected physical or sexual abuse or neglect of a child. Neglect meaning the intentional failure to provide necessary assistance and resources for the physical needs of that child. Basically, Child Protective Services works to protect children and preserve families through screening, community education, family prevention. It can help with foster care, kinship, all of that. So another resource you can call, the Crisis Center. You can call at that number. You can also go in person. It's at 1301 Picard Drive. It's in Rockville. You don't need an appointment. Also 24/7. It's targeted towards people who are in mental health crisis, and they can do emergency crisis evaluations. They can have treatment referrals for psychiatric and situational crisis situations. And sometimes they do have, I think, 4 crisis beds available in an alternative to hospitalization for those who are uninsured or insured within the public mental health system. So another resource that you can use. The Family Justice Center, which you'll hear about in a little bit from one of my colleagues on the panel, but our Special Victims Division at the Montgomery County State's Attorney's Office is actually co-located with the Family Justice Center. It's down the street from the courthouse at 600 Jefferson Plaza, and it's where you can go for services for victims of domestic violence and their families. But you'll hear more about this from Smita. And then the Treehouse Child Advocacy Center. This is a place that's dedicated to reducing trauma, promoting healing for a child or an adolescent victim of sexual, physical abuse or neglect. And it's kind of a one-stop shop where there can be education for abuse and prevention of abuse. They do comprehensive medical evaluations, mental health assessments. They can provide therapy and treatment. There's victim advocacy, and it's a very child-friendly environment. And all of these services are free of charge. So, you know, when we're investigating crimes, we very frequently work with these different organizations in order to, you know, have a multifaceted approach to handling a crime and, you know, providing resources for victims. So just stuff for everyone to be aware of, to know where you can go if you need help.
Thank you, Ms. Bagari. I did want to note that we have been joined by Jose Ortiz from Councilmember Natalie Faney Gonzalez's office as well. Next, we're going to hear from Christine Hong, who's the Chief of Services to End and Prevent Homelessness, also known as SEPH, S-E-P-H, at Montgomery County Department of Health and Human Services. Please.
Thank you, Councilmember Katz, for inviting me to join this esteemed panel. I want to talk today a bit about the picture of homelessness in Montgomery County today. And so I'm going to start with the data from our point-in-time count. This is an annual count that we do, and many of you may have participated as volunteers where usually in the 3rd or 4th week of January each year, volunteers go out and canvass the 500 square miles of Montgomery County and do a literal count of the number of people experiencing homelessness. And that's not just outside, but also within our emergency shelters, transitional shelters, and safe havens. So let's go to the next slide where I can show the data on the point-in-time count. So this year, we counted 1,510 people experiencing homelessness in Montgomery County. That's a 32% increase from last year's count. And if you look back at the last 4 years, it's a 162% increase. So that was in 2021 when we had the lowest count in the last 10 years of 577. So it's a dramatic rise from that point, which was during the pandemic. And I will talk about the factors contributing to that significant increase during this presentation. But yeah, basically what we're seeing is a significant increase in our community of people who have lost their housing. So it's a sobering snapshot of our county. Let's go to the next slide so I can break down those numbers by subpopulations. So this is a breakdown of the total count, and there in the first column you can see the increase of 32% of the total counted. But then if you go to the number of people and families, you can see between 2024 and 2025, that's where the largest increase occurred. That's an 80% increase in the number of people and families. And then 2 columns over in family household, so that's counting the family unit, there was a 98% increase. So 103 families in 2024 were counted and 104 families in 2025. And I can tell you after analyzing the data carefully that it was the increase in family homelessness that drove largely the overall increase we're seeing here. And that is very concerning because we're talking about a subpopulation that is more than half children, our most vulnerable subgroup. And so there are many things that we need to do to bring that number down. With that, let me move to the next slide. As Captain Brickles shared, I also wanted to share our eviction data, and he's absolutely right that the number of evictions as a percentage, number of evictions executed as a percentage of the number of writs received is decreasing. However, if you look at the number of evictions executed over the last 4 fiscal years, the number has more than doubled between FY22 and FY25, and our FY25 numbers are our year-to-date numbers. The numbers in FY22 are low, lower than, I would say, historic data because of the pandemic. But still, even in the last 3 fiscal years, you can see that the evictions are increasing, the ones that are executed. So intuitively, you can imagine that that definitely contributes to the number of unhoused households that we're seeing right now. Before I go to the next slide, I do want to thank the Sheriff's Office for their collaboration with Services to End and Prevent Homelessness. They provide us the information so that outreach partners can go out to all the households who are scheduled for eviction to provide outreach and resources so that, if possible, those evictions can be prevented. And Services to End and Prevent Homelessness provides that eviction prevention service in our 3 regional offices, which can be accessed through 311. But I just want to express how important that collaboration is, and that I so appreciate how challenging it is to carry out evictions, and together we can work to prevent more, which we have. So just many thanks to Sheriff Wee and to Captain Brickles and the whole team for working together with Seth. With that, let me move to the next slide, and we'll talk a little bit about some of the factors contributing to the increased number of homeless families that we're seeing. So obviously, the affordability of housing in Montgomery County is a factor, but that is the case across the country. So rising rents are a factor, as is inflation. The fact that wages have not kept up with those increasing expenses. And so during the pandemic and even now, we continue to see families and households come to us with very large arrearages. We're talking about $6,000 to $13,000, and we are able to provide $3,000 in financial assistance. So for some of them, we really struggle to assist, though we can help with relocation as well. That is the last resort. It's not ideal, but we can also assist there. In addition, our safety net resources are eroding. So our food stamps, our TDAP, our temporary cash assistance, our utility assistance, they are not keeping up with the inflation, the cost of, keeping the lights on, keeping food on the table. And so if families have to pay more to pay for utilities, and our utility prices just went up June 1st, then that's less that they have to dedicate to rent. So many families, as you can see across the board and in our homeless numbers, are struggling. In addition, we were able to prevent so many households from entering homelessness with the COVID-era emergency rental assistance funds we received from the federal government. That funding is all but gone, and so we have our county resources, which as a county I'm very thankful for the dedication to preventing homelessness, but in many cases it's still not enough. And then, of course, there is the factor of domestic violence, which continues to be a significant factor and life experience that households report as contributing to their situation. And then the vulnerability of household members. There are many families who have either a head of household or a child with a significant disability. And in some cases, that causes the family to decrease their earned income, which contributes to the struggle to meet rent each month. So those are the factors we've been seeing from those we serve and those that we have surveyed in the point in time count. With that, I'll move to the next slide, which are the components of our homeless response system in Montgomery County. So the first set of services is housing stabilization services. That is where the eviction prevention resource is provided that I mentioned. That's assessing whether an arrearage can be paid off and what type of plan could assist a household in avoiding an experience of homelessness. In addition, we have centralized diversion. Once a household does lose housing, we have a limited amount of resource to try to see if they can get connected and stay with family or friends with a little bit of financial assistance, and that can often prevent a household from entering the homeless system. If that fails, then of course we have our emergency shelters. And in Montgomery County, we have 10 emergency shelters, 3 of which are for families, 6 of which are for individuals, and then 1 is a domestic violence shelter. When we see a massive increase in family homelessness, as we have over the last couple years, we also utilize hotels as overflow shelter. So we have been relying on those over the last few years more than previously. We also have street outreach providers who regularly canvass the 500 square miles of our county to provide resources to anyone who is outside and to let them know about the shelters in our county so that they can hopefully come inside. Then we have 2 different types of housing with limited supports. That's often rental assistance and perhaps light touch navigation. And then supportive housing for households who need more ongoing support. That's our rapid rehousing program and our permanent supportive housing program. And I believe that is my last slide. And so I can take questions after the presentations, but just want to thank everybody for your collaboration and thank the public for your support in continuing to prevent and end homelessness for the households we see experiencing it.
Well, thank you, Ms. Ong. Next, we're going to hear from Smita Varia, who's the program manager from the Family Justice Center.
Thank you, Councilmember Katz. And hello, everybody. Today I'm here to talk to you about the Montgomery County Family Justice Center. We are a department or an office under the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. And next slide, please. The Montgomery County Family Justice Center opened in Montgomery County in 2009, and we are a victim-centered, trauma-informed model in which multiple domestic violence, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations are co-located and work in collaboration with each other so that victims and their children can access all of the services that they need. So in a sense, the Montgomery County Family Justice Center is a one-stop shop where we have client assistants. We have 8 client assistants, many who are bilingual in English and Spanish, who help any victim of intimate partner violence with resources, with services that I will elaborate in a next couple of slides. Next slide, please. So the Montgomery County Family Justice Center is located at 600 Jefferson Plaza. We're on the 5th floor in Rockville. It is accessible by metro, by bus, by parking in the garage attached to the building. In addition, if clients are unable to come to the Family Justice Center on their own, they can call our center and we can send a taxi to their house, pick them up, and bring them to the Family Justice Center. The whole goal of the Family Justice Center is to take away all the barriers for a victim of domestic violence to get services. We are open Monday through Friday from 8:30 to 5 p.m. and no appointment is needed. You can call for services, you can walk in, or if you'd like to set up an appointment, you can also call and make an appointment. Our number is there on the screen, 240-773-0444. We also have an email address that I will say is not monitored 24 hours a day. So we do not, if it's an emergency, we of course encourage you to call 911. All the services that I'm going to be talking about for the next few minutes are free. All of the services, all of the referrals, everything that we do are free to anyone that needs it. Next slide, please. So who we serve in Montgomery County at the Family Justice Center, we serve anybody that lives in Montgomery County or if the abuses occurred in Montgomery County. We know we are a county where people are coming and going from neighboring counties. So if the abuse is happening in Montgomery County, we can still assist you. Now that's to say that if somebody is visiting from another area or is just here temporarily, we're not going to turn you away. We will do some safety planning with you and make sure that you're safe before we make that referral to the area that you reside in. We work with anyone ages 16 and older. If somebody is under the age of 16 who is dealing again with intimate partner violence, teen dating violence, we can still work with them. We just need parental consent. Of course, we work with anyone of any gender, sexual orientation, regardless of immigration status. We use the county language line to work with anyone that doesn't speak English as well. Next slide, please. Like I said earlier, we like to think of ourselves as a one-stop shop for services. So the people that come to the Family Justice Center are sometimes referred to by the police, are sometimes coming in from the court after they filed for a temporary protective order, or if they've just heard of us through word of mouth, through friends, through any educational campaigns that we do. So we, of course, with everyone, we offer safety planning. We want to make sure first and foremost that they're safe at that time. We make a plan for how they can continue to stay safe, if they're still living with their abuser, if they've decided to leave their abuser. We make these plans on an individual basis. We offer counseling for adults and for children. And like I said earlier, it is a partnership. So the Family Justice Center employees, of course, are through the sheriff's office, but then at our office are satellite offices of many other government agencies and nonprofit organizations. So we offer counseling for adults and children through various nonprofits. We do basic needs referrals. If you need referrals for food, if you need shelter placement, we call the crisis center with you to be able to be placed. We have emergency items in our office, such as diapers, wipes, toiletries, winter coats, school supplies. We can also offer some very minimal financial assistance for groceries, in addition to some funds that we have for some one-time expenses that a domestic violence victim may be dealing with. We work with an organization called Career Catchers to offer career counseling. Many times a victim feels that they cannot leave their abusive relationship because they don't have a job or they don't have work experience. Career Catchers works with clients to increase and to value their interviewing skills, their job resume writing, get it in classes at Montgomery College, so that they can then get a job and continue to earn their own money to be able to live free from abuse. We work with many different organizations to provide legal advice and representation for those protective order hearings. We know that court can be a scary place, and so we work with DVS Legal Services, the volunteer legal advocates, House of Ruth, Maryland, to provide legal advice and representation so that victims are not going to court on their own. We can also do virtual protective order hearings in our office on the temporary protective order stage, where the judge shows up on Zoom and they can do it from the comfort of our office and not have to go to court. We work with Shady Grove Adventist Healthcare for medical appointments. If somebody has been injured because of the domestic violence, we want to make sure that they're getting the medical assistance that they need. We work with Catholic Charities to provide any immigration legal services. If somebody is here because of their spouse who's the abuser's status, or if they're here undocumented, we're able to work with Catholic Charities to be able to start that paperwork so that they can stay here legally. We also, as Sheila had mentioned earlier, we work very closely with the State's Attorney's Office and the Special Victims Division of the Montgomery County Police Department if they would like to file criminal charges because of the violence that they're experiencing. Again, all of these services are free. And again, anybody can walk in anytime. They can call us. They can make an appointment. We are also only going to do what the client wants to do. We are not going to make anybody do anything they are not ready for. We just want to offer all of these things, and then they can choose which they feel they are ready for. And we're flexible. If they change their mind, if they start with a couple of things and then want to come back later for other services, we will continue to work with them. We never close a case. Our door is always open. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Varia. And with that, I'm going to toss it to Jordan for questions and answers.
Great. Thank you so much, Councilmember Katz. And for the virtual audience, there's a link to all the slides in the chat for you to review. Now, just a friendly reminder that we did receive a lot of questions from residents on similar issues. So I'll be reading some submitted questions that reflect a broad part of the community. Please also note that all questions that have been submitted will be captured and used to help us plan upcoming webinars. Now we'll move on to the questions. Up first are questions about local law enforcement resources for eviction, domestic violence, and child support. This person says, is there any legislation available for those impacted by the federal layoffs when it comes to eviction prevention or help for those in need that are facing eviction? Not sure who would like to answer that.
Hi, I can respond to that as far as eviction prevention resources.
Okay, thank you.
So the housing stabilization services of services to end and prevent homelessness provide case management. It's very solution focused. So a family or household they could access our services either by coming to one of our 3 regional offices based in Germantown, Rockville, and Silver Spring, or by calling 311. And they could speak with a worker who would assess their situation. And if we find we are able to prevent an eviction by providing that small amount of financial assistance, we will do that. If that is not enough, then we may talk about relocation just to prevent the experience of homelessness. But we know that that is very disruptive to households, but those are available to the public, and inquiries can be made through 311.
Great. Thank you so much, Christine, for that helpful information. We can move on to the next question. This kind of looks like a 2-part question. This person says, can you elaborate on any local attorneys that may provide pro bono legal assistance for protective orders and family law matters? And what about attorneys that provide direct legal immigration services to foreign-born victims and their families? What local immigration legal services are available in Montgomery County when it comes to this topic? And feel free, anybody can chime in.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Jordan. So in terms of working with attorneys to provide pro bono legal assistance for protective orders and family law matters, the Family Justice Center works with several different pro bono agencies to provide free legal representation. DVS Legal Services, the Volunteer Legal Advocates, formerly known as the DC Volunteer Lawyers Project, and House of Ruth, Maryland, all work directly with the Family Justice Center and clients to be able to represent clients at their protective order case hearings. Volunteer legal advocates also works on family law matters, and if it's specifically a case regarding custody or child issues, we also work within an organization called Child Justice. In terms of attorneys that provide legal immigration services to foreign-born victims and their families, we again, as I mentioned earlier, work with Catholic Charities. They can meet with clients at our office in Rockville who need, who need immigration legal services. If that doesn't work out for whatever reason, there are other organizations such as Ayuda and the Tahare Justice Center that also help with any foreign-born victims and their families.
Great, thank you so much, Nita. It looks like we also have a live Q&A question that has come in, and this person is saying, is there any data on homelessness in the county and mental health?
Yes, so mental health is one of the life experiences or vulnerabilities that when we ask on the night of the point in time count of some of the experiences of people we're seeing, that is one that a number of people respond to, that they do have behavioral health needs. And our response to that is that we as a system look at what is available to address that need. So there is an incidence of it, but I would also say that those who experience homelessness are often those who struggle to access the resources and are marginalized. So it's our job at Health and Human Services, at CEF, to work harder to provide access to those services.
Thank you, Christine. Next, this person says, pre-submitted question. Once an eviction has been scheduled, can tenants then that have received a warrant or restitution or a writ of possession do anything to resolve the process? What actions can be taken to avoid an eviction at that point? Are exact eviction dates disclosed?
All right, I can answer this one. Yeah. So once the judgment is granted, the only way to prevent the eviction is basically for the tenant to pay the amount due that is on the judgment. There is something called absolute judgment without right of redemption. This is when 3 judgments for unpaid rent are entered against the tenant in a 12-month consecutive period. And what that means is no right is basically the eviction is going forward even if they pay the rent. So at that, once it gets to that third judgment, there's really nothing they can do except prepare for the final eviction notice. And once they get that within 10 days, they or shortly after, at least 10 days after that, the eviction will occur. So now, as far as the exact eviction dates for safety reasons, for deputies and the community as a whole, the exact dates are not provided. But again, as I mentioned, the sheriff's office posts a final notice at least 10 days prior to the eviction occurring, which helps them prepare for the eviction process.
Thank you so much, Captain Brickles. Christine, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to add to what Captain Brickle said as far as the eligibility for eviction prevention services. So it used to be that to be eligible for that eviction prevention financial assistance, you needed to have a writ of restitution to be eligible. However, a year and a half ago, we changed our policy to move the eligibility to when a household receives a court summons for a missed rent payment. And that gives a whole lot more time for CEF to work with the household to prevent the eviction. So if a household has an eviction filing before it's even gone to judgment, we strongly encourage them to call 311, come to one of our regional offices and work with our team to see if we can't prevent that and help with the payment.
Thank you, Christine. And again, thank you, Captain Brickles. Live Q&A. This person says, is there any information from pro bono attorneys for child support with parents who refuse to pay? This is a live question. Not sure if we have an answer there. If not, we can refer to county services and you can look through the slides, but whomever would like to answer can chime in. Okay. We'll circle back to that. This looks like it's for the state's attorney's office. What is a protective order, and how is that different than a restraining order or a stay-away order?
Okay, so a protective order is kind of like a restraining order. It's an order that tells someone that they need to either stay away from someone, from their home, from their work, from their school, wherever they may be, that it prevents that person from abusing or harassing the individual. Protective orders are a little different from restraining orders in the normal sense that they can have broader protection. It can require the person who is served with a protective order to, for example, vacate the home or the premises, to give up firearms, to engage in counseling for domestic violence or substance abuse. It can kind of act as a temporary child visitation situation. It can require emergency family maintenance or financial support. So it's kind of like a restraining order plus. And so it's, yes, it's a stay away, but it can order you to also do other things.
Got it. Thank you so much for that information, Sheila. And this person also wants to know, do you have to have a certain type of relationship with the other person to be eligible for a protective order? If so, what type of relationship qualifies? What if that person's relationship does not qualify for a protective order?
Okay, so for a protective order, you have to have either a sexual or familial relationship with the other party, meaning a family member, relation by blood, marriage, or someone that you've lived with for at least 90 days. So you have some sort of familial connection with them. It counts if you're married or divorced or separated. If it's adoption, that counts too. So step parents are part of it. You have to have been in a sexual relationship for at least 90 days prior to filing for it. If it's an ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, if it's a parent or a child, and I'm sorry, the 90 days is for cohabitants having a sexual relationship. If you're ex-boyfriend or girlfriend, that can be a year. A vulnerable adult, any sort of sexual assault, that qualifies for a protective order. Protective orders can last up to a year. If you don't fall into that category of people, then you can apply for what's called a peace order. So it's basically, relationships such as, and these are just examples, neighbors, strangers, coworkers, someone who you have a non-sexual or dating relationship with. And those orders can last up to 6 months. So that's kind of the difference. Both of them, if someone violates a peace order or protective order, they can face charges for the violation, which carry up to 90 days in jail.
Thank you for that helpful information, Sheila. Up next looks like a question for Smita with the Family Justice Center. Can you elaborate on the Family Justice Center's on-site therapists that are available to respond to the emotional needs of victims and provides tools and support during the healing process? Is there counseling also available for children who witness domestic violence? I think you kind of touched on that, but if you can elaborate. Thank you.
Yes, absolutely. If someone is in need of counseling, we partner with a number of agencies, including HHS Trauma Services, the House of Ruth Maryland, the Jewish Coalition Against Domestic Abuse, and King Health Systems. And those are all available for therapy, again, free of charge, free of service, free of cost for adults. For children, witnessing domestic violence can be very, very traumatic. And so we want to make sure that they're supported as well, which is why Montgomery County has what's called the Safe Start program. The Safe Start program is where there is either group therapy or individual therapy for those ages 4 to 18. And any county agency or school, either Montgomery County Public School or private school, can send in a referral to the Family Justice Center, and that child will then begin receiving services, again, group therapy or individual therapy, so that they can process what's going on. The Safe Start program, therapy for victims and therapy for abusers, the abuser intervention program, can also be ordered within a protective order as well.
Got it. Very helpful information. Thank you, Smita. How long does it take to evict a tenant in Montgomery County? And this is for the Montgomery County Sheriff's Office. I don't know if Captain Brickles wanted to chime in or.
Yeah, sure. So there's obviously the process is the eviction can't be filed until there's 3 months of past due rent. So right off the bat, you have those 3 months. Once it's filed, you have the hearing date that I discussed earlier. The hearing date, it could take up to a month, maybe 2 months to get that scheduled and actually get the judgment granted. Once it's delivered to us, the landlord has to schedule the eviction, and sometimes they don't schedule it right away. For various reasons, they have up to, I believe, it's 60 days to schedule the eviction. So there's potentially 2 more months there, and then of course once it's scheduled, we do the eviction. So when it's all said and done, from conversations with some other folks, property managers and stuff, it's about 6 to 8 months for the whole process to be conducted.
Great. Thank you so much, Captain Brickles. We did have a Q&A come in. This person asked, are there similar supports for homeowners who are behind on their mortgage as there are for renters in the county? Christine Hong was very helpful. She responded, yes, if eligible, housing stabilization services at SEPH or SEF can provide limited assistance with foreclosures. I didn't know, Christine, did you want to elaborate on that? And again, thank you for answering that live Q&A.
Of course. No, I think that it all has to, it depends on the situation. There is eligibility related to income as well for many of our services. So it's best to reach out through 311 and inquire, and so that a worker can evaluate the homeowner situation.
Great.
Yes.
Thank you, Christine. Thank you so much. And we have time for one more question. What sets Montgomery County apart when it comes to local law enforcement resources for eviction, domestic violence, and child support compared to local jurisdictions? What makes Montgomery County special? And does Montgomery County offer more resources than other local jurisdictions? And anybody can feel free to answer that.
This is Osmita from the Family Justice Center. I will say that I think what sets Montgomery County apart is that everybody works very well together. We at the Family Justice Center work very closely in partnership with the Sheriff's Office, with the Police Department, with the State's Attorney's Office, so that we are in real time making sure that domestic violence victims and offenders are getting any of the help, any of the services that they need, and that it's a real collaboration rather than in other places where a lot of times the different law enforcement agencies are working in silos.
Thank you, Smita. That was a very, very great answer. Well, that looks like all the time we have for questions this evening. And just a reminder that the next United in Service and Support Community webinar will be hosted by Councilmember Gabe Albornoz on Thursday, June 26th at 7 p.m. And the topic will be community food resources for our residents. Now I'll go ahead and toss it back to Councilmember Katz for closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank our panelists for a most informative evening. And I want to thank our council communications team, Equin, Lucia, Sonia, Jordan, Geneva, Marcella, Claudia, and Bertha. There's a lot of hard work that goes on behind the scenes and during the scenes to put on a webinar. And I like to always say, it's not done by magic. People had to do it. So we certainly thank you. And I wanted to thank Jordan Lindsay, who makes the difficult job of moderating look easy. And you always do a great job, and it's certainly appreciated. I want to thank everyone who took the time out from their busy and hectic schedules to be with us this evening, the public. And for all the discussions like we've had this evening, I'm always reminded of the words of Lester Holt, who says, please take care of yourself and each other. And with that, I'd like to say thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Katz, for those wonderful words. And members of the virtual audience, please take a look at your screen where you will see a list of local helpful resources that were mentioned this evening. And thanks again for joining, and everybody have a great evening.